In the early years of the air war over Europe, the sky belonged to the Luftwaffe. From 1940 through much of 1942, German fighter pilots ruled the airspace with confidence that bordered on arrogance. They had earned it. Veterans of the Spanish Civil War and the Battle of France now flew sleek Messerschmitt Bf-109s and deadly Focke-Wulf 190s, aircraft designed for speed, climb, and lethal efficiency. When American bombers first appeared in large numbers over occupied Europe, German pilots could hardly believe their luck. The B-17 Flying Fortress was impressive, bristling with guns and flying in tight formations, but it came with a fatal weakness. It had no long-range escort. Once British or American fighters turned back toward the Channel, the bombers were alone. And the Luftwaffe knew it. German aces called it frei Jagd, free hunt. They climbed above the bomber streams, waited for the perfect moment, then dove through the formations with cannon and machine guns blazing. Engines exploded. Wings tore off. Entire crews vanished into clouds of smoke and fire. After a pass, German fighters simply climbed away, knowing no Allied aircraft could follow them to altitude or pursue them home. The statistics told a brutal story. In 1942 and early 1943, bomber losses mounted at a rate the Allies could not sustain. Crews joked darkly that completing a full tour of missions required luck, not skill. Many never reached their 10th sortie. Luftwaffe pilots, meanwhile, watched their victory tallies climb. Names like Galland, Marseille, and Molders became legends, spoken with awe even by their enemies. What made the situation worse was predictability. American doctrine insisted on daylight precision bombing, flying the same routes at the same altitudes again and again. German radar detected the formations early. Interceptors were already climbing when the bombers crossed the coast. For the Luftwaffe, it was war conducted on familiar terms, against an enemy that seemed brave but helpless. By 1943, German pilots were convinced the Allies could never break through without unacceptable losses. The bombers could reach Germany, yes, but they could not survive there. The skies above Europe remained a deadly trap, carefully controlled by experienced men who believed they had mastered the air war. And for a time they were right, but the balance of power in the sky was fragile. It depended on one assumption, that Allied fighters could never stay with the bombers all the way to the heart of Germany. That assumption was about to be shattered. When the P-51 Mustang finally appeared over Germany in late 1943, it did not announce itself with spectacle. There were no dramatic formations, no sudden changes in bombing routes. At first, German pilots barely noticed it at all. It looked unfamiliar, lean, almost fragile compared to the heavy American fighters they were used to fighting. Many assumed it was just another escort that would turn back before reaching the Reich. They were wrong. The Mustang was not designed to intimidate. It was designed to endure. With its drop tanks and astonishing range, it stayed with the bombers when every other fighter had to turn away. For the first time, American B-17s and B-24s were not alone over Berlin, Leipzig, and Regensburg. And the men who had hunted bombers for years suddenly found themselves hunted. What made the Mustang truly deadly was not just how far it could fly, but how well it fought once it got there. The Rolls-Royce Merlin engine gave it exceptional high-altitude performance, matching the Luftwaffe's best where the battles actually took place. It could climb, dive, and accelerate with terrifying balance. German pilots who tried to escape upward discovered the Mustang could follow. Those who dove found it still behind them. But the real shock came from how the Americans used it. Mustang pilots were not ordered to stay close to the bombers at all costs. Instead, they were encouraged to roam ahead, sweep airfields, ambush climbing fighters, and chase enemies all the way to the ground. This was a new kind of air war. Luftwaffe aces who once chose when and where to fight now found themselves attacked while forming up, refueling, or returning home low on fuel. Experienced German pilots understood immediately what this meant. Skill no longer guaranteed survival. Familiar tactics failed. Aces who had survived hundreds of missions began to die in weeks. not because they were worse, but because the enemy had finally caught up. By early 1944, Luftwaffe radio chatter changed tone. Warnings replaced confidence. Reports spoke of Mustangs appearing everywhere. The sky no longer felt safe. Not at altitude, not near the bombers, not even over German airfields. The P-51 had not just evened the odds. It had turned the air war upside down. And from that moment on, every German ace knew the truth. The hunter had become the hunted. For years, Luftwaffe pilots fought by one unbreakable rule. If things went wrong, there was always a way out. Dive away, climb into the clouds, head for home. Germany's skies, its airfields, and its flak belts formed invisible sanctuaries where experienced pilots could survive another day. The P-51 Mustang erased that rule. Its range was the first shock. German fighters were accustomed to American escorts turning back near the border. Once the bombers crossed deep into the Reich, the Luftwaffe attacked knowing the enemy fighters would soon vanish. But the Mustang did not turn back. It followed the bombers over rivers, cities, and industrial heartlands and stayed. Soon, there were no safe distances anymore. The Mustang's speed and high-altitude performance made traditional escape tactics unreliable. Climbing no longer guaranteed safety. Diving was no longer enough. The P-51 could match both. German pilots reported being chased for dozens of miles, through cloud layers, across flak zones, and right up to their own airfields. Worst of all, the Mustang waited. American pilots learned to linger near German bases, circling at altitude, watching for returning fighters low on fuel and ammunition. A pilot who had survived combat over the bombers now faced his greatest danger during landing approach. Wheels down, speed low, no room to maneuver. The moment of relief became the moment of death. Flak belts, once trusted shields, lost their power. Mustangs cut through them without hesitation, attacking below the flak bursts, forcing German pilots to choose between American guns and their own anti-aircraft fire. Safe corridors collapsed. Predictable routes became fatal traps. Even weather no longer offered protection. The Mustang's stability and visibility allowed it to fight in conditions that grounded older fighters. Clouds that once hid damaged aircraft now concealed their pursuers instead. Luftwaffe veterans noticed a terrifying change. They were no longer choosing battles. Battles were choosing them. Morale suffered faster than aircraft losses. Experienced aces became cautious. Younger pilots became reckless. Training shortened, mistakes multiplied, and confidence disappeared. The sky over Germany turned hostile in a way it never had before. By mid-1944, German pilots understood the truth with brutal clarity. There were no rear areas, no recovery zones, no sanctuary left in the air war. The Mustang had not just followed them into Germany. It had followed them everywhere. For years, Luftwaffe aces were predators. They chose when to fight, where to strike, and when to break away. Experience meant survival. Dozens of victories brought confidence, authority, and near-mythical status. In the skies over Europe, German aces were not hunted, they hunted. The P-51 Mustang changed that balance forever. American doctrine quietly shifted from protecting bombers to something far more aggressive. Escort pilots were no longer told to stay close at all costs. They were encouraged to seek out the enemy, to roam, to intercept German fighters before they ever reached the bombers. The goal was no longer deterrence. It was destruction. Aces became priority targets. Mustang pilots learned to recognize patterns, how experienced German pilots climbed, how they approached from the sun, how they disengaged. Radio intercepts, combat reports, and hard-earned experience revealed something critical. Aces behaved differently. They were confident, predictable, and once identified, they were pursued relentlessly. The Mustang was built for this hunt. It could climb with the best German fighters, dive without losing control, and maintain speed in a prolonged chase. When an ace tried to disengage, the Mustang followed. When he turned for home, the Mustang stayed on his tail. The old advantage of experience now worked against them. It kept them in the fight longer, just long enough to be caught. Some aces were killed far from combat zones, alone, out of fuel, or seconds from landing. Others fell while trying to protect younger pilots who could not escape. The hunters were forced into defensive roles they had never trained for. German morale cracked where it mattered most. Each fallen ace was more than a loss of an aircraft. It was the loss of years of experience. Replacement pilots arrived faster than they could be trained. Formations filled with men who had never fought a Mustang before, guided by leaders who were already dead. American pilots noticed the change almost immediately. Enemy attacks grew disorganized. Coordination failed. Engagements became desperate instead of disciplined. By late 1944, Luftwaffe veterans admitted the truth in their diaries and post-war interviews. The Mustang had turned the air war upside down. Skill no longer guaranteed survival. Reputation offered no protection. For the first time, German aces understood what it meant to be hunted. And they understood it too late. By 1944, fear had returned to German cockpits. Not the panic of inexperienced pilots, but something far worse: quiet, calculating dread. Luftwaffe aces still took off. They still climbed toward the contrails of American bombers. But now, before every engagement, a single thought pressed into their minds. Is the Mustang already behind me? The P-51 did not announce itself. It did not climb steeply from below or attack head-on like earlier American fighters. It appeared silently, already at altitude, already fast, already in position. Many German pilots later described the same moment. An instinctive glance over the shoulder, a flash of silver, and then the realization that escape might not be possible. Experience no longer brought comfort. Aces knew the numbers. The Mustang could stay with them at every altitude where combat mattered. It could dive without compressibility problems and climb back without losing energy. Turning fights that once favored the Messerschmitt or Focke-Wulf now ended in stalemates or worse. The old rules were gone. German veterans spoke of exhaustion more than terror. Missions stretched longer. Fuel calculations became desperate mathematics. There was no safe moment to relax, no guaranteed window to disengage. The Mustang followed beyond the front lines, beyond flak belts, sometimes nearly to the runway itself. The psychological pressure was relentless. Pilots hesitated before attacking bombers, knowing that every second spent lining up a shot increased the chance of being intercepted. Young wingmen died quickly, forcing aces to protect them instead of hunting freely. Formation discipline broke down as pilots scanned the sky behind them instead of ahead. Even victories felt dangerous. Survivors recalled how the sound of an American engine behind them could freeze their hands on the controls. Some broke away too early. Others pressed attacks too long and never returned. The Mustang did not need to win every dogfight. It only needed to stay close, to deny rest, to drain confidence. By the end of the war, Luftwaffe pilots admitted what few said aloud at the time. The Mustang was not feared because it was unbeatable. It was feared because it erased certainty. Skill could not guarantee survival. Experience could not ensure escape. In the cockpit, alone at high altitude, even the best pilots understood the truth. The sky no longer belonged to them.